The day my grandmother died, a part of me died with her. But the part that remained, the part that had to keep living, was built on a lie she told me with her last breath. She held my hand, her skin like parchment, and she whispered, "Amelia, you are my legacy. This house, our story. It will all be yours. You are the keeper of my heart." I held those words to my chest like a shield. They were my comfort in the long, empty nights that followed. But at the reading of her will, a lawyer ID known my whole life spoke a single name that turned my shield to dust. It wasn't my name. It was the name of a stranger. And in that moment, I realized my grandmother hadn't just left me a house. She had left me a mystery. And the first clue was a single cryptic sentence she'd whispered to me a week before she died. A sentence that made no sense until I heard that name. "Forgive me for the ghost in the garden. My name is Amelia." For my entire 42 years, my identity has been intrinsically tied to my grandmother, Sophia Whitmore, and the venerable old Victorian house she called Whitmore Haven. It wasn't just a building, it was a living chronicle of our family's resilience. The story was our bedrock. Sophia, the beautiful young war widow, who bravely held on to the family home after her husband, Charles, was lost in the war. She raised my father, Lucas, alone, turning this house into a symbol of grace under pressure. I was the one who never left. While my sister Isabella built a corporate career in the city and my brother Noah traveled the world with his camera, I stayed. I was Sophia's companion, her archivist. The one who learned the recipes, who knew the stories behind every crack in the plaster and every rose bush in the garden. I wasn't waiting for an inheritance. I was participating in a sacred continuity. I was being groomed as the next custodian of the Whitmore legend. The house was a museum, and I was its most devoted curator. The scent of old books and lemon polish was the scent of my life. The sound of the grandfather clock ticking in the hall was the heartbeat of my world. I knew every secret of that place, the loose floorboard in the upstairs hall that hid my childhood treasures. The way the morning light hit the stained glass window in the parlor, casting ruby and emerald jewels on the floor. This was my inheritance, not the monetary value, but the story, the proof that I belonged. But a week before she died, Sophia changed. It was subtle. She became distant. She would sit for hours in her garden, staring at the old gnarled oak tree at the far end, the one she had never allowed anyone to prune. Her eyes, usually so clear and present, held a faraway look, as if she were watching a movie the rest of us couldn't see. That's when she said it, her voice a thin, papery whisper, her gaze fixed on that oak tree. "Amelia," she said, her hand fluttering to rest on mine. "You must forgive me for the ghost in the garden." I squeezed her hand, thinking it was the morphine, a fragment of a dream. "There are no ghosts here, Grandma," I'd assured her softly. "Only happy memories." She'd just smiled, a sad, secretive smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You'll understand one day," she'd murmured. "And when you do, please, try to forgive me." I dismissed it. But now, standing in a lawyer's office, hearing the name Henry Blackwood, that strange, haunting sentence came rushing back. And I knew, with a cold, sickening certainty, that the ghost had just stepped out of the garden and into my life. The will reading in Mr. Abernathy's office was a scene from a play where everyone had forgotten their lines, except for one character we never knew existed. The air was thick with the smell of old leather and anticipation. We were all there, my father, Lucas, stern and proud, his grief held tightly in the set of his shoulders. My sister Isabella, poised with her legal notepad, ready to take efficient notes on the transition of assets. My brother, Noah, fidgeting, already mentally composing his escape. And me, sitting quietly, waiting for the formal confirmation of my destiny. Mr. Abernathy's voice was a dry, steady drone through the small bequests. A pearl necklace for Isabella. A trust fund for Noah's future children. A portfolio of stocks for my father. We nodded, a silent, somber audience. Then he cleared his throat, a sound that seemed to echo in the sudden stillness. "And now, to the matter of the residuary estate." comprising the primary residence at 1142 Willow Lane, its contents, and the majority of the liquid assets. He paused, adjusting his glasses, and for the first time, I saw his hand tremble slightly. I, Sophia Eleanor Whitmore, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath the entirety of my residuary estate in perpetuity to Henry James Blackwood. The silence was absolute, a vacuum that sucked all the air from the room. It was Lucas who shattered it. He stood up so abruptly his chair scraped back with a shriek. Abernathy, this is insanity. Who is Henry Blackwood? Is this some kind of clerical error? Before the lawyer could answer, the door to the office opened slowly. A man stood there. He was in his early 30s, dressed in simple, clean clothes. He wasn't imposing. He had kind, anxious eyes and a quiet demeanor that felt utterly alien in that room of high tension. I'm Henry Blackwood, he said, his voice soft, yet it carried in the stunned silence. The look on my father's face was one of pure, unadulterated betrayal. Isabella's pen clattered to the floor. Noah just stared, his mouth agape. But I looked at this stranger and my mind was screaming one thing, the ghost in the garden. Henry took a hesitant step into the room. Mr. Abernathy, he said, looking to the lawyer for guidance. This is impossible. Lucas roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of crimson. My mother would never do this. This man is a fraud, con artist. What did you do? Did you manipulate her? Poison her mind? Henry flinched but held his ground. I didn't. I only met Mrs. Whitmore a few times. I swear, liar. My father slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. The rage in the room was a physical force. Mr. Abernathy stood, his voice firm. Lucas, please. The will has been thoroughly vetted. It is legal and binding. Sophia was of perfectly sound mind when she signed it. She knew exactly what she was doing. Then she was cruel. I burst out, the words torn from a place of deep personal injury I didn't know I possessed. I looked at Henry, my vision blurring with tears. She told me it would be mine. She promised me. What did you do to her? Henry's eyes met mine, and in their depths I saw not triumph but a profound and unsettling sorrow. Nothing, he whispered almost to himself. I did nothing. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Accusations flew. My father was threatening legal action. Isabella was coldly demanding Henry's personal information. And Noah was trying to be a voice of calm in the hurricane. Through it all, Henry just stood there, a rock in a stormy sea, absorbing the blows without fighting back. As we stormed out of the office, I turned back for one last look at him. He was standing alone in the middle of the room, his shoulders slumped, staring at the copy of the will in his hands. He looked less like a victor and more like a man who had just been handed a life sentence. And all I could think was, who are you? And what is the ghost you represent? The days that followed were a descent into a cold war. Our family, once united by the warm glow of Sophia's presence, was now bound together by a shared icy fury. We convened in my father's living room, a war council plotting its strategy. We can test it, Lucas declared, his voice gravelly with rage and lack of sleep. We allege undue influence. We prove he preyed on a vulnerable old woman. We will not let this nobody to walk away with my mother's life. Isabella was already in full legal mode. We need a forensic accountant. We need to subpoena his financials, his background. There has to be something. A history of fraud, of elder abuse. Will prove he isolated her. I was the silent strategist, my mind working in a different direction. The ghost? I said quietly. They all turned to look at me. What? My father asked, impatient. A week before she died, Grandma said something strange to me. She said, forgive me for the ghost in the garden. I thought it was the pain medication. But now I think she was trying to tell me something. About him, I looked out the window towards Whitmore Haven. I think the answers are in that house. We hired a lawyer, a ruthless woman named Ms. Croft, who specialized in contentious probate. The siege began. We filed the lawsuit. The beautiful, peaceful home became a battleground, its value itemized and contested in cold legal documents. Meanwhile, I began my own investigation. I spent hours in Sophia's house, now feeling like a trespasser in my own past. I went through her papers, her photo albums, her ledgers. I was looking for any mention of Henry Blackwood, a receipt, a letter, a phone number, but there was nothing. It was as if he had never existed. But I did find something else. Tucked inside her favorite book of poetry, a collection of Yeats, was a faded black and white photograph of a young woman I didn't recognize. She had Sophia's eyes, but a wilder, freer smile. On the back, in faint pencil, was written, E18. Forever my secret. E, who is E? And then, there was the garden. I started spending time there, especially near the old oak tree Sophia had stared at. The ghost in the garden. I examined the base of the tree, the soil around it. One afternoon, after a light rain, I noticed a patch of earth that seemed looser, less compacted than the rest. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was this it? Was something buried here? A box of secrets. I didn't have the courage to dig. Not yet. The thought felt too much like a violation. My first direct confrontation with Henry was inevitable. I saw him one evening, walking slowly up the path to the house, his hands in his pockets. He looked like he was carrying the weight of the world. I stepped out onto the porch, blocking his path. "What are you doing here?" He looked up, startled. "Melia, I was just coming to see it." "Try to understand what?" I snapped, my voice cold. "How you managed to swindle an old woman out of her home." He shook his head, a gesture of profound weariness. "I didn't swindle anyone. I told you I only met her a few times. She found me. Why? Why would she seek you out?" He looked at me, and his eyes were so full of a pain I couldn't comprehend that it gave me pause. "She said she owed a debt. Debt to my mother." "Your mother? Who is your mother?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation I saw a flicker of fear. "It's complicated. And it's not entirely my story to tell. There are other people, their privacy. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You've stolen my home, my history, and you're worried about privacy. I will tear your life apart, Henry Blackwood. I will find out who you are and what you did. I will expose you." For a second, something flashed in his eyes, not anger, but something like desperation. "You might not like what you find," he said softly. "Sometimes it's better to let the past stay buried." "It's too late for that," I said, turning my back on him. "The ghost is already out." The legal battle was a slow, expensive grind. Ms. Croft deposed neighbors, Sophia's doctors, anyone who had seen her in the last 2 years. The consensus was unanimous. Sophia Whitmore was sharp, coherent, and fiercely independent until the very end. There was no evidence of confusion, no large, unexplained withdrawals. Our case was crumbling. The strain was tearing my family apart. Lucas was drinking too much, the proud patriarch crumbling under the weight of his mother's perceived rejection. Isabella was becoming brittle, her efficiency masking a deep-seated fear that we were fighting a losing battle. Noah seemed to be seeking a different path. He started doing his own digging. I looked up Henry Blackwood. He told me one evening over coffee. He's a historian, an archivist actually. He works for the city, restoring old documents. Doesn't exactly fit the profile of a master manipulator. A historian. The words sent a chill down my spine. Keeper of stories, just like me. "Did you talk to him?" I asked. Noah nodded. "I did. I called him. He was surprisingly willing to talk. He said he wants this to be over as much as we do. He said there's a reason, a big one, and it's tearing him up inside to keep it from us. Then why doesn't he just tell us?" I cried in frustration. "He says it's not just his secret. It involves other living people. He's trying to protect them. Other living people." The phrase echoed in my mind. Who else was connected to this? Driven by a new urgency, I went back to the garden, to the loose patch of earth under the oak tree. This time, I brought a small trowel. My hands were shaking as I knelt and pushed the blade into the soft soil. I dug carefully, my breath catching in my throat. About a foot down, the trowel hit something solid. Not a rock. Something metallic. I scraped away the dirt, my heart pounding. It was a small, rusted metal box, the kind that might have held cookies decades ago. It was locked. I carried it into the house, my prize feeling both sacred and stolen. I didn't have the key. I had to break the fragile lock with a screwdriver. Inside, nestled in a bed of wax paper, was not a stack of letters, but a single sealed envelope, and a small tarnished silver locket. My name was on the envelope, in Sophia's elegant handwriting, for Amelia. To be opened only if the path becomes unclear. My hands trembled so violently I could barely tear it open. The letter was dated just 1 month before she died. My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are standing in a storm of confusion and hurt. I am so sorry. Please know that every word I ever spoke of my love for you was true. You were the light of my life, but a life, my darling, is not a single story. It is a library, and some chapters are kept in a restricted section, too painful, too complicated for the world to see. The story, you know, the war widow, the resilient matriarch, was a chapter I wrote to survive. To give your father and you a stable, respectable world to grow in. The truth is, there was another chapter, a first chapter written when I was very young, full of a love so passionate it felt like madness, and a loss so profound it almost killed me. That chapter resulted in a child, a daughter. I named her Eleanor. I was forced to give her away. The pain of that day has been my constant companion, the true ghost in the garden of my life, the ghost of the daughter I lost. Henry Blackwood is Eleanor's son, my grandson. I left him the house not to punish you, but to atone to her. To provide for the branch of our family that was so cruelly severed. It is the only amends I can make. I know this will shatter the world, you know. I am asking you from beyond the grave for the most difficult thing of all, to understand. To find it in your heart to forgive an old woman her secrets, and to see that in righting this old wrong. I am not destroying our family, but trying to make it whole in a way I never could in life. With all the love I possess, Grandma Sophia. I sank to the floor, the letter fluttering from my numb fingers. The air rushed from my lungs. A daughter, secret granddaughter. Henry was family. The ghost wasn't a specter. It was a bloodline. The locket lay in my palm. I fumbled with the clasp. It opened to reveal a tiny, faded photograph of a baby with a tuft of dark hair. Eleanor. The world I had known, the story I had built my life upon, dissolved into nothing. The war widow was a lie. The foundation was sand, and Henry wasn't the enemy. He was the missing piece, the living, breathing proof of my grandmother's greatest sorrow. But the letter raised more questions than it answered. Who was the father? Why was she forced to give the baby away? And why was Henry so hesitant to tell us this himself? What, or who, was he still protecting? The siege was over. The real mystery was just beginning. I didn't tell my family about the letter immediately. I needed to process it alone. I carried the weight of Sophia's secret for 2 whole days, feeling it change me from the inside out. The anger was gone, replaced by a vast, aching grief for the woman my grandmother had been, and the lonely burden she had carried. Finally, I knew what I had to do. Called a meeting, not with lawyers, but as a family. And I invited Henry. We gathered again in Sophia's sitting room. The atmosphere was different this time. The rage had burned out, leaving behind a weary, apprehensive silence. Lucas looked exhausted. Isabella was watchful. Noah seemed to sense a shift. When Henry arrived, he looked even more anxious than before. He saw the metal box on the coffee table, and his shoulders slumped in what looked like resignation. I found it, I said quietly, holding up the locket, under the oak tree. I read her letter. Henry closed his eyes for a moment, as if in pain. So, you know, I know that you are our grandmother's grandson, I said. my voice surprisingly steady. I looked at my father, his face a mask of confusion. Dad, Grandma Sophia. Before she married Grandpa Charles, she had a baby, a daughter named Eleanor. She was forced to give her up for adoption. Henry is Eleanor's son. The shock that washed over my father's face was more profound and more terrible than the anger had been. It was the utter demolition of a man's understanding of his own mother. A daughter, he stammered. But the war, my father. Grandpa Charles wasn't your biological father, I said gently, handing him the letter. He married her later, gave her his name, his protection. The war widow story was a shield. Lucas took the letter, his hands shaking violently as he read. I watched his face as he journeyed through the words, disbelief, horror, and finally, a devastating sorrow. He finished reading and simply sat there, staring into space, the letter falling to his lap. The proud son of a war hero was now the son of a story designed to hide his shame. His entire identity had been erased in a few paragraphs. Why? He whispered, the word ripped from his soul. Why didn't she tell me? Henry finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. She was trying to protect you, all of you. The secret was so old, so painful, she didn't know how to break it without hurting you. And there's more. We all turned to him. The reason it was so dangerous, the reason she was forced to give my mother away, it was because of the father. Henry took a deep breath. His name was Alistair Thorne. The name meant nothing to me, but I saw my father's head snap up. His face was pale. Thorne, as in Thorne Industries, the family that owns half the town. Henry nodded grimly. Alistair Thorne was the eldest son. 23, powerful, from one of the wealthiest, most respected families in the state. Sophia was 18, a maid in his parents' house. When she got pregnant, the Thornes were furious. They saw it as a scandal that could ruin their son's future. They paid her off, forced her to sign papers, and had the baby taken away. They threatened to destroy her and her entire family if she ever spoke a word of it. The pieces were falling into a horrifying new picture. Our family's respectable legacy was built on the silenced suffering of a young maid at the hands of a powerful dynasty. My mother, Eleanor, she always felt out of place, Henry continued. She went looking for her birth mother a few years ago, and she found Sophia. They connected in secret. But the Thornes, they're still powerful. Alistair is an old man now, but he's still the patriarch. He has children, grandchildren in high places. When my mother contacted Sophia, his family found out. They threatened her again, told her to keep quiet or they would ruin Lucas's business, smear Isabella's reputation. They said they would protect their family legacy at any cost. He looked at us, his eyes pleading for understanding. That's why I couldn't tell you. Sophia made me promise. She was terrified that the truth would not only break your hearts, but that it would destroy your lives. The Thornes have that kind of power. Leaving me the house was her silent act of defiance. It's a way to provide for her firstborn's child, without speaking the truth aloud. She thought the secret would die with her. The room was utterly silent. The enemy wasn't Henry. It wasn't even just the past. The enemy was a living, breathing, powerful family that had been shadowing our own for generations, enforcing a silence that had warped our entire history. The ghost in the garden wasn't just Eleanor. It was the lingering threat of the Thorne family. A specter of power and corruption that had dictated the course of Sophia's life, and by extension, ours. The truth was a wrecking ball, just as Sophia had feared. But as the dust settled, we saw the landscape more clearly than ever before. The beautiful gilded cage of our family's story lay in ruins, but we were all still standing. And for the first time, we were free. The legal battle was formally dropped. There were no winners, only survivors of a shared cataclysm. The decision to sell Whitmore Haven was unanimous. It was no longer a home. It was a monument to a painful, complicated history. We couldn't live in a museum of lies and silenced pain. The proceeds were split, with Henry receiving the largest share as Sophia had intended. But the money felt secondary. The real work was the fragile, tentative process of rebuilding a family on a foundation of truth. It was awkward and painful. Lucas had to grieve the mother he thought he knew and learn to accept the more complex, courageous woman she truly was. He and Henry began taking slow walks together, not as father and son, but as two men connected by a shared, formidable woman. Isabella, ever pragmatic, used her legal skills not to fight, but to protect. She helped ensure all the paperwork for the house sale was airtight, shielding Henry from any potential backlash. Noah became the bridge, the one who could make Henry smile, who included him in casual outings, slowly weaving him into the fabric of our lives. And I finally saw Henry for who he was. Not a thief, but a fellow survivor. A fellow keeper of a broken story. We spent an afternoon in Sophia's garden before the sale, digging up a few of her favorite rose bushes to transplant to our own new homes. "She would have wanted you to have these," I said, my hands covered in soil. He looked at the rose, then at me. "She loved you so much, Amelia. You have to know that. The letter she left for you? That was the real her. The part she was never allowed to show the world." I nodded, tears in my eyes. "I know, and I'm sorry. For everything we put you through, we were all just prisoners of the same ghost," he said softly. The day the for sale sign went up, we all stood together on the sidewalk. Lucas, Isabella, Noah, Henry, and me. It wasn't a sad moment, it was a release. A young couple with a baby was viewing the house. We saw them point to the oak tree, and the woman laughed. The house was ready for new stories, unburdened ones. It's been a year now. My father has retired and started a small woodworking business, finding solace in creating things with his hands. Isabella got a promotion and is happier, lighter, no longer carrying the weight of a family facade. Noah's photography has taken on a new depth, focusing on stories of lost and found families. Henry lives in the same city now. He comes for Sunday dinners. He and my father talk about history. He and Noah go to the movies. He sends me articles about archival techniques, and I send him pictures of my Sophia roses blooming on my apartment balcony. On my bookshelf, next to Sophia's book of Yeats, sits the little metal box. Inside is the locket with the picture of baby Eleanor and Sophia's letter. I don't look at it often, but I like knowing it's there. It's a reminder that the most valuable inheritance isn't a house or a name or even a story. It's the courage to face the truth, no matter how much it hurts. It's the resilience to pick up the pieces of a shattered past and build something new, something honest, something real. My grandmother spent her life building a beautiful fortress to protect us from a painful truth. But love doesn't need fortresses. It just needs a foundation strong enough to bear the weight of who we really are. The ghost in the garden has finally been laid to rest. And, in its place, we have something far more powerful. We have each other, okay? And we have the truth. And that, I've learned, is the only legacy that truly lasts.